I'm eating, I'm drinking, I'm thinking about my last caffeine dose so that I hit the gym, I can get right into it. Athletes that went ahead and mobilized in the evening by starting by sitting on the ground, just kneeling, side sitting, long sitting, doesn't matter, work on the bottom position of your squat, whatever. Throw in some soft tissue work there, you're gonna fall asleep faster and you'll stay asleep longer. So we started to kind of understand that, hey, if we got people up in the morning, started doing a little bit of movement prep, sun salutation. We created the ready state hip spin up, ready state shoulder spin up. If you want to do 10 minutes of breathing, basically for all the teams we work with, I'm like, you can either do a breath spin up, hip spin up, or shoulder spin up. I'm like, you got to give me 9 or 10 minutes in the morning just to touch some positions and shapes. So later on, I don't have to crack so much rust off. Keep the engine moving, get myself prepared. I'm eating, I'm drinking, I'm thinking about my last caffeine dose so that I hit the gym, I can get right into it. And then I'm going to save that soft tissue work for the evening. And then I've done all of this walking, I've done all this movement, and pretty soon I'm not as stiff anymore. Pretty soon I realize I'm getting more work done in the gym, and that ends up being very, very sustainable. In fact, I go to the place where I don't know if I need 75 full minutes in the gym.
You're listening to the Born Primitive Podcast.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Born Primitive Podcast. How we doing, Tony?
Morning, better.
Feeling good?
Feeling good.
Well, if for anyone watching, you might be shocked, but the lion's mane is gone. So, feeling a little self-conscious about it, not going to lie, but definitely feeling high speed, low drag right now.
We should have put it in a bowl here.
Yeah, we should have.
A little ceremony.
But hey, we're really excited for today's guest. After working some technical difficulties, we finally got it rolling. But I want to read his bio very quickly. Dr. Kelly Starrett, a physical therapist, movement specialist, best-selling author known for helping people improve their health and performance through better movement. He co-founded San Francisco CrossFit and the ReadyState.com, where he serves as the chief health officer. His work spans from elite athletes in professional sports and in the military to everyday individuals, offering practical, science-based strategies to reduce pain, enhance mobility, and build long-lasting physical resilience. Alongside his wife, Juliet, he leads the Starrett system, a coaching platform that supports people in integrating movement and health into their daily lives. And I believe your recent book, Built to Move, as well as the one a lot of us were tracking before that, Becoming a Supple Leopard, which goes into great detail on a lot of these things. So, Dr. Kelly, thanks for joining the podcast.
Super major pleasure. And may I just say, you're so handsome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, you said something about a quad sweep before we went live. I don't know what that means, but I'll take it.
Well, look, it just, I feel like adult men over 200 pounds, you need to have quads, thick thighs, save lives. That's what we've been telling our daughters forever,
I don't get great gas mileage, but if I need to drop it in 4-load and pull someone out of the ditch, I might be your guy.
Yeah, mountain biking is my jam, and I don't have a kilo to watt problem. I have a kilo problem.
There you go.
So,
there you go.
I'm just like, well, shit, I need a bigger engine. Let's go.
That's right.
More quads solves all the problems.
I love it. Well, for today's episode, since we only have about an hour, we wanted to focus a lot of this on kind of that active professional, maybe former athlete, but, the person that doesn't have 3 hours in the gym every day to do, an extended mobility and then a long workout or a couple sessions and then a big cool down. And also that person that might be, in working on at a desk in between. And I guess come up with just some practical, insights that, of course, you've gained over the years and gone way deeper in helping athletes at the most elite level. But obviously those, practices can apply to the everyday person too, that still wants to get after it and throw it down in the gym, 4 or 5 days a week. So, I guess to start it off, Tony, do you think we should start in the gym? You know what I mean? Or where do you want to kick it off?
Yeah. Start at the gym. Quick ways throughout while getting 3 or 4, 5 workouts in a week. How can you start to integrate mobility into a 60 or even 90-minute session?
And I think to frame that up even more, let's say you have 75 minutes at the gym. And you have this dilemma of like, the more I warm up in the beginning and the more I do mobility, the less time I actually have to get after it. And as well as at the end, a lot of times I will not have any time at the end to do any cool down, and I'm literally rolling right out the door, going straight to the office. And I know that's probably, not what I should be doing. But it takes me a lot longer to warm up now. I probably take at least 30 minutes to warm up. I usually hit the bike or a rower for, 1K row.
It takes 10 minutes to find your reading glasses so you can read.
Exactly. And then I do a couch stretch against the wall really hard to get the, and then, I have my own little dynamic warm up. It's actually the same one I used when I was a college football player. It's the strength coaches warm up that we did a million times. That's the same exact warm up. So I guess let's approach like a 75-minute gym session for that kind of busy professional that's got to run straight to work or, whatever, and how to best optimize, that time, taking into account, obviously, the longevity piece. We have the aesthetic, but like we also want to, it to actually work for a long time. And I think that's the hard balance. We all want to go in and jack the bench press and the bicep curls. But if you feel like the Tin Man getting out of bed every morning, which is kind of me, it's like, okay, where's the balance there? Maybe I should be doing a little bit more mobility on the front end, the back end, and a few less bicep curls.
Well, fortunately for us, we've run this experiment a lot. I mean, I think, it's easy to forget. We have been talking about position and restoration position and something we call reducing session cost, which is, this notion that if you can just outwork the competition, which you cannot do anymore, but you can pay less of a price for the same amount of work. And over time, that really aggregates into a big change, in terms of, less CNS fatigue, less stiffness, maintaining, average power, increasing weight, all that. So Juliet and I ran a gym for 17 years. I still coach at a university I work with, Berkeley, and with their entire athletic department, and spent a lot of time with specific teams. So I'm still in the trenches. I'm not just consulting with the Niners and et cetera, et cetera. I still am actually, saying, hey, we've got to get a lot of work done in a really sort of finite amount of time. So I wouldn't actually start with the gym, but let's start there, because ultimately the goal is, if you're heroic enough to have gotten to the gym, we want to prioritize everything that you need to get done in the gym. And that's the priority, because the weights are there, the motivation is there, the intention is there. And so if you're spending a lot of time having to do a lot of ancillary things to get yourself prepped for the gym, we see that that's actually a lost opportunity to get underneath the bar and start going. And number two, it hints at maybe some adaptation errors in your lifestyle. And we'll talk about ways to get prepped so that I think it was Paul Hogan a long time ago, was like, golfers, like, you can't just walk up to the tee and say, today I'm going to be great. I want you to shift your mindset that you're actually prepping from the gym when you wake up in the morning. That's when we're getting ready. The same lesson that we learn if we're playing a game or competing. You don't just, do your thing and then 10 minutes later end up on the football field. That's not how it happens. So number one is, how hot and sweaty you need to be. Well, if you're working out first thing in the morning, you probably need to spend a little bit more time building some physiology. So I need you to be, really warm and ready to go. And that could start by taking a hot shower in the morning, jumping into a hot tub for a few minutes. Can we just get the tissues liquefied so you can do your thing? One of the problems that we have, I think, is that athletes often don't have bookends of position. They don't know what normative is. They don't know what their body should be able to do. And they don't know how that changes over time. So get into a heavy squat program, do a sport, and your range of motion is going to change over the course of a season. And one of the things we're trying to do is help our athletes get to know each other, know themselves in the gym every day. Who am I today underneath this bar? One of the things we're trying to do in the gym is restore position, improve position, and improve efficiency and economy. So it's not just get big and strong, it's also work on these shapes. And if I ran yesterday, if I sat at a desk and took a red eye yesterday, if I competed yesterday, part of what I'm doing in the gym is trying to rebuild those patterns, tell my brain it's safe to occupy these shapes, and just get tissues moving. So ultimately, the first thing we want to do is get hot and sweaty. And I would suggest that the gym has become sort of a lame place. And this is really unpopular, because what I see is people are like, I do my A, then I do my B, then I just take this vitamin. And then we've basically taken this training session, we've made it highly decorative. And I'm trying to train every body part, every muscle system, every movement, every vector, right? And that's just not possible. So what we want to be thinking about is, what are the big boulders we want to move today, right? What do I need to get done? And how do I stack that time in the gym where I'm exploring new shapes, exploring new things? Hey, I saw this cool thing on the internet with shoulder rock. Hey, I have never done that before. I would suggest that if you grabbed a friend and threw the medicine ball for 10 minutes in the racquetball court, you'd be ready to go to do anything. And I think that there's, number one, a real opportunity to take our warm-ups and make them a lot more fun and a lot more interesting and a lot more dense. And oftentimes we all inherited these very formal warm-up practices like you did from college or from national teams or wherever, and those stick with us, and we lose the opportunity to wake up our nervous system, pull up the vestibular system, a train. Even if you're doing Cal Dietz's figure 8 drill with the tennis ball walking in a circle, you're going to find that, hey, part of what we're trying to do warm up is bring your nervous system online, get your tissues ready to occupy the space that they're going to occupy, right? And shift blood from your, your stomach back into your muscles, get your, joints moving, all that. So one of the first things I want to say is, what are you doing from warm up? If you're getting on the bike, that's a weak ass warm up, right? If you're just sitting on the floor, you're foam rolling, that's not how we're getting ready for a fight. So number one, when you walk into the gym, I want you to ask, I'm about to go for a fight. What would I need to do to get ready for a fight? I'm actually going to have to fight someone. And if you start throwing that filter on, your workout warm-up intensity is going to go through the roof, and you'll be a lot more prepared for power clean, snatches, deadlifts, whatever the hard stuff is you want to do. As we get older, one of the things that I'm a big fan of is stacking these sort of essentials of energy system work in between hard doubles and triples. And you can adjust rest time, you can do, but what I think is, I'm 51, is and especially for older people, I need that training to be dense. And if I do only strength training and then I'm going to do conditioning over here, you're going to run out of time. And there are some times certainly where you don't need to do, you don't need to run and then deadlift. You can just deadlift, but we can put a clock on it. We can add some intensity. We can change rest domains. And what I find is that if I give you 10 triples, 10 doubles with some, sprint in between, you're going to start to get real hot. You're just going to have lots and lots of opportunities to take sets. And I'll tell you, it takes a minute sometimes. I don't start feeling like I'm deadlifting until I'm deep into the sets. Then I'm like, okay, now I'm actually starting to pull. My quads are going. I'm pushing through the floor. Now I'm deadlifting. It took me a little while to find that groove, even though I've been doing this for 40 years. So I think I first deadlifted when I was 12. So, let's keep in mind that, part of what we're trying to do in the gym, maintain density. So it means I want you hot and sweaty. I want you moving and playing. If you played spike ball, you got a David Weck rope, a heavy rope, and you did rope flow for 5 minutes, you're swinging around. I think if you were, playing indoor soccer, something like that, I think you would find that those sets are easy. And in between some of those warm-up sets, get under the bar that you're for your primary lift today and start hitting some warm-up sets. And if you're one of those people who's 135, 225, 315, 405. I know who you are because that's me. I'm like, there's only blue plate jumps unless I'm taking red plate jump days, right? What I want is, hey, let's take a lot more warm-up sets where we're playing with position. So suddenly I'm doing all my deadlift warm-up from split stances. I'm doing some single leg stuff. I'm doing some kickstand stuff. I'm changing grips. I'm trying to say, hey, I'm going to have a lot of tissue exposure underneath there. What you're not going to see me do is do a lot of foam rolling unless something hurts. So if something hurts, then part of the reason we're in the gym is, hey, I need to put a ball in this thing so it doesn't hurt, so I can bench or I can press or I can do the thing I want to do. What I'll then do is say, hey, if I'm struggling with position, I'm struggling to hit the fundamental shapes required for today's workout. We're putting our arms overhead today, but this is your overhead position. No, we're not. Quit lying to yourself. Part of what we're doing there is just layering in dysfunction. What we should be doing is saying, hey, yes, you're going to be pressing with a landmine today, but simultaneously, we could be stacking 1 or 2 joint mobs for a minute, 30-second isometrics in between your sets. And if you think a 30-second isometric is going to ruin your weightlifting, then you have a big problem. And the only reason we're doing those isometrics is that you can't achieve your position or your position feels off. And we're trying to make it possible for your brain to be able to quickly access that. So now we have this much denser, my athletes are prepared, right? I used to run our competitors class at 6 a.m. and people would roll in at 5:55 and I'd be like, how long have you been awake? And they're like, 5 minutes. I'm like, great. We're snatching heavy in 12 minutes. Do you think you can be ready to snatch heavy in 12 minutes? The answer is no way, never. And I literally had to read the riot act. Look, I got up, I'm prepared. I opened the gym and you're not prepared for my coaching today. So, let's get you prepared to actually take advantage of the class or take advantage of the session. And what I'll say is, if you then max out that time, 75 minutes is a long time, but we're not going to do cool down. Instead, I'm going to have you move back to your desk and and stay standing, perching against the stool. So I'm going to keep you in constant motion. I'm not going to sit you down and make you get tight. Worst thing I ever used to do is like deadlift heavy and then jump on an airplane. I'd be like, I feel wrecked, right? But if I can stay in kind of motion, if I can be at a standing desk, moving desk, perch against the bar stool, kind of be in motion, stretch my quads, then suddenly I can extend that time in the gym because I can do some of that cool down work later on. I'm then going to do all of my soft tissue work in the evening when I'm sitting on the floor. Why am I sitting on the floor in the evening? Because it turns out I can get 20 to 30 minutes of soft tissue work, right? The roller's right there. I can do 90-90. If you're doing 90-90s in the gym or long stay in the gym, it's not good use of the gym time unless you have 3 hours. So let's go ahead and start to segue that. And one of the things we found was that athletes that went ahead and mobilized in the evening, right, by starting by sitting on the ground, just kneeling, side sitting, long sitting, doesn't matter. Work on the bottom position of your squat, whatever. Throw in some soft tissue work there. You're going to fall asleep faster and you'll stay asleep longer. So we started to kind of understand that, hey, if we got people up in the morning, started doing a little bit of movement prep, sun salutation. We created the ready state hip spin up, ready state shoulder spin up, right? You do if you want to do 10 minutes of breathing, basically for all the teams we work with, I'm like, you can either do a breath spin up, hip spin up, or shoulder spin up. I'm like, you got to give me 9 or 10 minutes in the morning just to touch some positions and shapes. So later on, I don't have to crack so much rust off, right? Keep the engine moving, get myself prepared. I'm eating, I'm drinking, I'm thinking about my last caffeine dose so that I hit the gym, I can get right into it. And then I'm going to save that soft tissue work for the evening. And then I've done all of this walking, I've done all of this movement, and pretty soon I'm not as stiff in the morning. Pretty soon, I realize I'm getting more work done in the gym, and that ends up being very, very sustainable. In fact, I go to the place where I don't know if I need 75 full minutes in the gym.
Love that. You'll love that. And I want to hone in. Well, I guess from the gym standpoint, it sounds like the bottom line is like, I think the biggest mistake I see people make is with that warm up. They just don't ramp it up. It's static. There's no dynamic. They're not getting their heart rate up, and that's not really a warm up. And I was fortunate, when I was in college, like we were introduced to like a very dynamic warm up. And, if he had us in the weight room for an hour and then we had to go to class, he knows, all right, I got to maximize it. So right off the bat, you're getting moving. So I still try to replicate that, but it seems like most people, I don't know if what you observe, Tony, it's like the kind of casual gym goer does not, take that approach, and they're static.
It's wasted time.
Yeah. They're static, stretching. Yeah, exactly.
They're looking at their phone. Like, I don't know what you're doing. If you did, like, look, I'm going to talk about my influence as much as I can. Stuart McMillan of Altus Track and Field. Go back, listen to him on Huberman, but go do a track and field warm up outside. Get some sun on your body. Do your A skips, do your B skips, run around, throw the Frisbee, whatever. If you did that stuff, I guarantee you everything's going to get better later on. You're hot and sweaty. Dan John used to say the warm up is the workout. So he put people into couplets and triplets doing assistance work, body, conditioning, and then they were ready to squat heavy or deadlift heavy, right? Because it takes a minute to get ready.
Yeah. And that's what I found. And it relates to you saying, like, even spike ball, that was something over the last year, because the gym we go to, Bear, has a basketball court. So I'll go in there for 12 minutes and just play. And there's no one in there except for myself. So I look like a dork, but like pretend like I'm playing one-on-one. And then I know by the end, and here's a little subtle brag, when I can start dunking, I know I'm ready to go work out. So I'm kind of just dribbling, like shooting.
KPI is so cool.
Yeah.
Right. Like your nervous system knows, not going to dunk, not ready to dunk, not ready to dunk, not ready to dunk. You've done so many deceleration drills. You've done so much cutting. One of the things that I'm trying to tell people, I'm like, if you're going out and getting injured playing pickleball, right, then it is a sign that your workout and training is horseshit. And it's not your fault. You've been sold a bill of goods that, like, if you do this slow, stiff-legged deadlift and you do all this corrective exercise, look, the ready state, I don't believe in corrective exercise. I don't do corrective exercise. I'm not saying they don't work. Of course it works, right? But I love that for rehab and for injury at max. What I do is regress and progress. And more importantly, let's train like athletes. Let's get going. And your nervous system exactly knew when you could go and you were ready to go. And I love that you had a KPI around, okay, we see people doing these brutal interval stuff. I'm like, hey, your warm up didn't include a single high intensity heart rate zone where you actually touch that intensity that you're going to go later on. So we're seeing that the warm up has really become lost opportunity. And to your point is if you can go play around, and let me just talk about an example. I'm working with Cal women's water polo team. We're a really good team, top 4, top 5. Last year we played for a national title. So I came in 2.5 years ago and I was like, what are you doing? Like, you're about to get in the pool and fight Stanford. Like, you're doing arm circles. Like, I don't understand. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to get into a fight. So suddenly we're doing gnarly breath hold running drills, right? We swing ropes, we fight, we throw medicine balls, we do resisted runs. When I can tell when our best player takes off her sweatshirt, she's down to her sports bra and she's sweating and panting, I'm like, okay, I think we're ready to go fight this other team. And for the last 2 years, in the first quarter, we bring it and smash the shit out of these other teams. They're overwhelmed. And that's only because we're better prepared.
Well, and what I love about it too, and we actually talked to Gabby Reese about this, who I know is a friend of yours. Now, it was more centered around, I think we were talking about kids in relationship when we were talking about it with her, was like implementing play into your everyday. And I love what you said there. It's like, instead of going in and doing this rigid thing where it's like, okay, hold for 30 seconds, hold this. And it's like, it's not that that's bad, but like when you start to integrate these things that are a little more fun and dynamic, it's like you get 10 minutes, your heart rate's up and you feel like you just got a little play in a day that, like, I know with 3 kids and three kids and a job, it's like you get to the end of the day most time, you're like, I didn't take 5 minutes to do something that was kind of just dynamic. So I love what you're saying about like finding unique ways to get that heart rate up, get your body moving in a dynamic way, because then it can start to feel like play as opposed to a 10-minute like just knocking the rust off.
And look, we all are veterans of the gym. We like the gym. The gym is recursive. I do more pull-ups so I can do more pull-ups. You know what I mean? Like, we forgot that we were actually training for something. Like, that was the point. It's aesthetics are cool, but aesthetics are shit. They don't mean shit. Like, there was that article in the New York Times last year about Mahomes having a dad bod. And I was like, have you seen Mahomes fucking move on the field and throw and dodge? And like, people were like, he doesn't have a V shred. And I was like, hold up. I don't think you understand what the goal is. And the goal is to train for a sport and to have your body composition match your sport. And aesthetics has really been driven by internet, by confusion, where we think that the goal is to look a certain way and not function a certain way. So one of the things that we do in, our model in the Ready State, right, mobility WOD, supple leopard, all that, is that we're like, there are these bookends of function that out of which I can make any complex movement, whether we're talking coiling or throwing or deadlifting or power clean or cutting. There are just some root shapes that your body should be able to access, right? The shoulder seems very complex, but listen, everyone, it does 4 things. It goes overhead, right? It goes out in front of you in a range. It goes behind you and it goes out to the side. And what we can do is we can say, hey, do you have access to those positions? Yes or no? And of course, the elbow bends and there's rotation. And that's where it feels like it's super complicated, but it's not. Whether my elbow is straight or elbow is bent, the position of the shoulder is the same. So we can start looking at your programming. We can ask, hey, are you touching these fundamental shapes? If you don't have some kind of muscle snatch, single arm kettlebell swing, Cuban rotation, I'm like, I guarantee you your bench is going to suck because you don't have any internal rotation. And when you go into extension, your shoulder is going to translate forward or get tight. So part of what we're doing in the gym is making sure that we're touching fundamental shapes. There's a reason there's a heavy step up in every weight room in the country. I mean, legitimate weight room. Why? Because that pistol position where we're bringing the leg into flexion and the knee is a little bit closer to the belly button, not out to the side in a wide ass, west side box squat, that maintains shape and position that you're going to need to sprint. So look, however you want to train, entirely up to you, but you hit the nail on the head. We have sucked the joy out of the gym. This should be the best time of the day. All the best coaches I know compete in the gym every day. And it's a dumb competition. Max pull-ups. Who's got the biggest wattage? Who can put the fastest, highest wattage output on the Kaiser? Who can do we compete and gamify the crap out of it because we need to be entertained. And this is play.
Doctor, you just said something about when you kind of boiled, and I think you're really good at this in general, is like boiling down what can become this kind of complex lexicon. You said the shoulder, and you have such experience in so much knowledge that you're able to boil it down in such a practical way. I'm going to digress from like the practical takeaways. This is going to be a little more on the nerdy side, but it's a wall that I've ran into a couple of times as a baseball player who played at the Division I level, and I was 6'4" when I was 13. So like really tall, really lanky. And when I started to kind of dissect my movement, because I was having low back issues in college, really, I think where I ended up was kind of some pelvic floor and deep abdominal stuff that like
because you didn't have any hip extension. You didn't train hip extension. You had no hip extension. Yep. And I don't even need to know you. I have enough professional Cy Young Award winners I work with, right? The patterns of the sport. I don't mean to interrupt, but you were fighting really complex things that were rooted in lack of exposure to fundamental positions that your body requires.
Yeah. And that's exactly where I wanted to go with it, is like something, and why I say I hit a wall is that I would call myself competent in kind of understanding how the core, meaning not just your abs, but like the full gamut of hips, low back, kind of deep abdominals, TVA, like how that works in general, but I'm certainly not an expert. And I would love for you, like I see a lot of, having gone through that myself, and now I move better and have more flexibility than I did when I was 21. Right. I see certain people even lifting heavy where it's like, oh God, like the basics of like core functioning isn't there. So where you're at in your career, how do you, for the everyday person that maybe like has been battling low back tweakiness for a decade, but still just gets after it, it's like, is that worth trying to tackle and dissect or kind of dissect? And from your perspective, I'm sure you have some easy ways where you don't need to become an expert on the way the core functions. How would you go about addressing that? Because I think the low back stuff, the hip stuff, I mean, the whole body in general, a lot of it with proper core kind of function, you do, at least from my experience, things start to ripple out from there pretty well. Whereas if that's not in place, you can do all the shit in the world to try to fix all these different things. And like you haven't really got to one of the roots of what could have been causing it.
Let's examine a couple things that you said that were correct and really great. Number one, we're not playing pain, no pain games. That's not what this is about. This is about function. It's not even about injury prevention. I want to be super clear on that, right? Because, throw, 100 pitches, 10 days in a row, let me know what happens. You just cannot adapt to that stress, right? So it looks like you're like, oh, my elbow is aching. You're like, yeah, no shit. You could not adapt to that stress. You got into 100 car accidents 10 days in a row. And it turns out we could not remove the congestion, give the body a chance to adapt. Right. So first of all, we can say is that looks like an injury happened at the end of that, but there were 100 steps that could have happened before. So when we're talking about technique, organization, right? Get into any sport, and if you're a pitcher, think about how much time you spend with your pitching coach, working on technique, working on position, restoring mechanics, doing pitching drills. Somehow, and all of us, think about all your time on the football field, all the small teams, all the breakouts, all the running, all the passing drills, all the shit you do. Now let's go to the weight room. Technique doesn't matter. Like literally, that's what we hear that from the physical therapists in the world. Oh, it doesn't matter. Round your back, do whatever you want. It's just a novel solution. I'm like, so it matters in technique in every sport on the planet, even F1, but it doesn't matter when I'm moving my body in space. Okay, so that's true if the conversation is just about injury prevention, right? Because the body is super durable. And I think we got into this conversation of pain, no pain, and will this cause an injury, instead of the conversation of which positions transfer more effectively, which positions allow me to maintain as much movement choice as I can have available to me as an athlete, and which positions and shapes hold true under speed and under speed load. Because at low loads and low speeds, you can do whatever you want. Let me just show you the deadlift in the gym. Low load, low speed, low force, big weight, low force, power clean, right? You start to see that stuff cleans itself up because those huge rainbow shapes don't transfer very well. Jumping and landing onto your toes like you're taking a poop doesn't transfer very well to being an athlete. So one of the things that I just gave a thumbs up somehow. Super weird. So one of the things that you said is, we need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on what is fundamental range of motion. So you start to throw these signals, these errors. Hey, I'm starting to get tight in my pelvic floor. My obturators are a little stiff. I'm having to mobilize my psoas a lot. What's going on here? The body's going to solve this problem for us this lack of position or lack of exposure. And remember, there's nothing natural about throwing a baseball. There's nothing natural about running into another human being a whole bunch of times on the football field. There's a lot of sports we do that just aren't natural. Biking, not natural, right? Awesome. And I'm just saying that our bodies are going to adapt to those shapes and those stresses. So part of what we're doing in the gym is making sure we're keeping an eye on minimums. If you ask any of the athletes I work with, how much should the hip flex? They all know. What's the rotation window of the hip? They all know, right? And then I'll ask, what's your rotation window? And they're like, I'm always battling an internal rotation, but today it's 10 degrees. They just know, because part of the management of your body is understanding, have I fueled? Have I slept? Does my body operate in the way that I know? So what are my minimums so I can do my sport? So one of the things that we're seeing is a huge opportunity is to get more knee behind the butt. So hashtag knee behind butt guy, but that's hip extension. And what if I come into a typical athlete's, I'll say athlete, a typical person working in the gym, I see sweet fuck all hip extension. There's just not enough hip extension going on. In fact, you think you're doing hip extension things like rear foot elevated split squats, but your knee is actually in front of your axis of rotation of your hip. It's just a different kind of squat. You're doing a single leg squat. That Robert Forster, he's that German sprint cyclist with the biggest quads in the world. You've seen that guy before on the internet. He fights the toaster. He looks like he's all on synthvol, like just huge, right? And that guy can squat like 500 on a single leg, but his knee never comes behind him in hip extension. So what I'm saying is we want to make sure that we're going into your programming and asking, how are you exposing to these fundamental shapes? And that can just be simple isometrics, like getting into a big tandem stance, holding a couple heavy 50-pound kettlebells in your hands, coming up on your toes, feet straight, squeeze your back butt cheek, and hold for 30 seconds. That's an easy way to be putting in some hip isometrics. Or rear foot elevated, jump out, go as deep as you can, get that knee behind your butt, and just hold that for 30 seconds in between your sets. So we need to be looking at these fundamental shapes and asking, how are we exposed there? Do I have isometric control, concentric control, eccentric control? And what often happens is that when we restore function, a lot of these mysterious problems, pelvic floor dysfunction of our athletes, erectile dysfunction, my athletes are peeing themselves, right? But we start to change and restore what the body should be able to do. Pelvis comes back into neutral a little bit, right? We start to turn more lights on in the room. The house isn't as dark and the body isn't having to sort of pull on as many brakes to solve this movement problem. And suddenly what you're seeing is, oh, that looks like kettlebell work, classic gymnastics work, classic Olympic lifting work. Like people have been solving this problem for a long time. And oftentimes we can use those red check engine lights as cues that I need to make sure I'm going back. And we see this all the time. Our Olympic heavyweight weightlifters have knee pain, but they don't have any hip extension in their drill, right? Travis Mash is a coach I work with, someone I respect hugely. One of his athletes was having some knee pain. I was like, hey, you need to just couch stretch in between some sets, get into that butt, get that hip extension. He's like, Kelly, not only did you solve our knee pain, but our back pain dropped to almost zero in the gym, right? And that seems like a miracle until you realize the body's amazing. And if it has access to its shapes and its rotation, then it's going to do what it needs to do. Then we just get to party and train hard.
Love that. Yeah, that couch stretch. I've been doing that hard. Like
game changer.
I hold it like 90 seconds each side and I'll do a couple rounds.
You ready for this?
Yeah.
Couch stretch that's low level. Then the real couch stretch is you need to have your front foot elevated on a bench.
Oh, wow. A front foot elevated on a bench.
So what that does, that puts you into hip lock, just like you're throwing a baseball from a pitching mound, right? That's that hip lock. That's Franz Bosch 101. When that knee starts to push into end range flexion, we can actually get better extension off that hip.
Yeah, because I ground my knee all the way to the wall, right? As far as it'll go.
That's step one. Step two is we need to start elevating that thing and then moving. Leg. And I'll tell everyone, one of the ways that I use that as a primer, not just as a recovery, because I have to couch stretch a lot. If my quads get behind, my back starts to ache. I'm like, oh, I know what needs to go on here. Is that get in the couch position, whatever is available to you, squeeze your butt as hard as you can on that trailing leg, and press your hip forward as hard as you can, just for a second. Get an impulse and do that 30 to 50 times. Then go do your squat sets. And you're going to be like, oh, it wasn't a stretch. It There's a neuromuscular activation. I touched some positions. I reminded my brain that my butt has to do its job when my knee is behind my body, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of the hamstring strains we see, for example, are the fact that we don't have access to hip extension. So the quads, the fascia, all the hip flexors, all the things that limit, even the adductors that limit my ability to get my knee behind my butt, inhibits my glutes. And if you get into couch stretch, for example, and everyone, that means you're just kneeling, you put your knee in the corner of the wall, right foot up. It's like I invented the couch stretch when I was like 12 years old. If you can't squeeze your butt like a diamond in the couch stretch, that means your hamstrings are having to work and do the job of flexing the lower leg, but also extending your hip. And that's one of the reasons your hamstrings get all pissy, is that your glutes aren't working because your quads are tight.
Interesting. I wanted to ask about sprinting for the, kind of the former athlete, people in their, maybe late 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, really any age. I've heard it's important, like, hey, you got to get out there and still activate your fast twitch, because I know that's what goes the quickest, and that's why obviously all these athletes, you look at like the shelf life of like a running back in the NFL, like it's, you know what I mean? As one of a million examples you could give. But how important do you think sprinting is? And, I guess what's a practical way? I mean, I drive by a high school every day going to work and I'm like, man, do I need to be getting out the old football cleats? No, for real. Like, do I need to go out there on the weekends and hit some 100-yard, 100 or 40s or whatever, just to like, pretend I'm an athlete again? And I don't do it a ton. I do a lot of, my fast twitch would be just like, Olympic lifts and things like that. But obviously that's different than sprinting, right? And
there's no hip extension. You're extending the hip. You're not actually hip extension.
So I guess speak to the importance, if you deem it important, I'm assuming you will, of sprinting for, guys our age and what that might look like.
So we'll take this from like 3 different views. Number one, the biggest, most dangerous thing you can do as a like middle-aged guys go play basketball, right? You're asking for a ruptured what? Say it.
ACL,
Achilles,
or Achilles,
right?
Yep.
We see more calf tears and Achilles strain. What position is that plant? That's sprinting, where you have to have long lever hip extension, leg is pretty straight, and you have to load that calf in that position. Excuse me, can I see where you've done that in the last year in the gym? Oh, you didn't. Not once, ever. Right? So number one is what we see is that we have a body and a brain that's not prepared for the speed and load that you remember to do. You have this motor pattern from that quick, cut. So number one is we need to do sprint-like things for the shape, just the shape. That can be pushing a sled. That can be lifting, flipping a tire. I'm a huge fan of that, right? Getting on the jammers is such a great way. Pushing up on a wall, just doing these isometrics that look like sprinting. So just for the shape alone, crucial to be loading so that we can tell our brains and tell our tissues, hey, we're going to be coming here someday. Number two, I don't think that the average person has the tissue tolerance or the range of motion to handle full-blown sprinting. You'll rip your hamstrings off the bone. Listen to Stuart McMillan. But what I'll say is you can go skip. You can start doing some flying 50s or flying 20s, right? You're not from a dead start, but you're just jogging. You pick up the speed a little bit. Go do that on a hill. What's the hill give you? Controlled range of motion. You're not going to be exposed to that big hip extension. So let's give ourselves some grace that, hey, sprinting requires a lot of due diligence and a lot of prep. And that means if you look at how much time our Olympic track athletes, and again, I've worked with, Olympic 100-meter medalists, that the amount of preparation that goes in so they can do 6 100-meter sprints, right? 6. And you're like, I'm just going to do 10 by 10, walk back, sprint again, like right out of the car. Like there's just, and that guy is 17 and probably on drugs. So, you are not wrapped in bubble tape anymore. You don't have the tissue tolerance. You don't have the exposure. So let's make sure that we're giving you some grace, which doesn't mean that you shouldn't be picking up the runs. Get hot, go out there. And I would say, hey, even take your cleats off. Let's do it barefoot. So you're getting some input in here. And I want you to do just, it could be, I want you to walk in between the end zones, and you're going to sprint an end zone, right? You're just going to sprint an end zone. So you got like 20 yards. You kind of pick it up a little bit. You pick up your speed, walk a little bit. The other thing that's really important here that you bring up is that fast twitch. We are not moving quickly in the gym. that speed component is gone. It's dead. Go watch what people are doing in the gym. And I'm like, let me tell you why you suck and why we're going to continue to school on you and why I think Olympic style weightlifting styles, that could be a dumbbell, that could be sandbags. You need to move your tissues under speed load. And there's a lot of ways to do that. No wonder we're like plyometrics are crucial. You got to be jumping as an adult. And that could be starting with jump rope. Let's make sure you're jumping. And then we're going to jump and do just 2-leg pogo hops with your jump rope. We can get a ton of exposure there. Last is that people are not touching that energy system at all. One of my, and all of you who are listening, when you come work out with me, you're not going to fall for this trap. But I'm going to say, hey, why don't we just go 15 seconds? Who can have the highest wattage? And then we'll hop off like a little weird French contrast. And we'll go over here and we'll power clean a double. And then we'll rest and do it again. I make people vomit so often because they cannot tolerate that peak energy system exposure. And so as I look at your energy systems, where are you spending your time? Everything is in a 1 minute on, 1 minute off. Great. You're going to shred at that. But your 30-second time to main suck, your 15-second time to main suck, your 2-minute time to main suck. So in that place, I want to make sure that we're touching these energy systems, but the sprint energy system, crucial.
Solid.
Yeah. We went down the rabbit hole with Andy Galpin on that. And it was very similar feedback on it.
Galps is on it, man. I mean, yeah, for sure.
We were laughing though. We're like that. And you said it perfectly. It's like, you still have the remnants of being able to move that fast. So then even you or I, we go out there and it's like he said, we've sprinted 3 times this year. And then you go out there and you're like, wow, fuck it, I can send it. And then you do it and you're like, oh boy, the thought's still there. The engine's there, but the framework hasn't been maintained, baby.
It's so funny seeing like older guys like, that try to sprint. It's like a men's kickball league, or you see like the NFL draft, or the fantasy league, like they'll do it by like 40-yard dash times, and like eight of the 12 guys like yank a hand. It's like, yeah, because you haven't sprinted in 10 years, dude.
Yeah.
So I guess to kind of summarize that, getting out in a track stance and hitting 40s, at 100% probably isn't the move. Not needed. I'm 37. But
how about this? You train for a marathon for how long? A year, 6 months? Why don't you train for that 40 for 6 months? And then we'll talk on the other side of that.
Jack, okay.
Bring him back.
Right?
You and I will have a 40 contest. Yeah. And we'll bring him back.
I'll watch. And I'll tell you, this idea that we need to sprint is just vital, and the exposure is vital, and you have to move fast, and however you want to do that. So what I would say is, hey, go ahead and sprint on a bike, sprint on a rowing machine, sprint on a ski erg. Let me just see you move quickly for a little while. And then we can see my favorite warm-up of all time. I've stolen from one of the greatest track and field coaches of all time, which is a fast 800-meter walk. So hey, I don't know what to do. I want you to walk the fastest 800 meters you can. Go outside, get some sun, right? It's a great time to like talk to your friends, kind of just shift gears, leave the work, leave the family behind. 800 meters. It's not going to take you that long. You'll be huffing and puffing, but you're not allowed to run. You got to walk fast. And every 100 meters, I want you to alternate between walking as fast as you can and skipping. Thank you, Stuart McMillan. And if you just start that exposure and let that run, 100-meter walk, 100-meter skip, 100-meter walk, 100-meter skip. A, I don't think you can skip for 100 meters right now. But B, I think what you'll see is just that combination of walking fast, skipping. Now we're starting to lay a foundation that we can start to build on. And that's real cool. It's why we've got to go outside and play Frisbee. Because I need you to be moving in these different planes and cutting laterally and accelerating a little bit. But that's got to be part of the play. One of the things that Juliet and I do is in our program is we actually program 90 minutes of play a week. You need to go outside on the weekends and actually play a sport. And we feel so strongly about it. You've lost the narrative.
Love that. Dr. Kelly, something my wife and I were talking about that I think it had to be over 10 years ago. We saw you do a video on, and we have 3 kids under 3. So it's just something that's very everyone has the same reaction. But the question is, what we were referencing that we saw you do a video on 10 years ago is, are there any foundational kind of, and I don't want to frame it as in like, because kids so natural with the play piece, they do that naturally. So there's by no means am I like, oh, how can we get them to play? It's like, they're going to do that naturally.
That's right.
But the video I'm referencing is you talking about not lifting your kids up by their hands without them gripping your hands and swinging them because their shoulder socket isn't ready for it. Are there any other things the conversation laughed at, or it progressed to the point where I laughed about how probably wasn't best that our parents just put me and my brothers in a Johnny jump up for like 4 hours and just jumped because those things like squeeze.
I don't know, you're pretty springy.
Yeah. Maybe. But the question is, any practical things for parents as far as like, how can you set your kids up with or provide opportunities in their daily routines outside of the play that kids are going to do naturally to set them up for having good movement patterns or not do certain things that's going to set them up maybe poorly as far as their movement is concerned? Yeah,
such a great, Juliet and I we just turned in the manuscript for our next book called Outplay, which is about sports performance for 12 to 18-year-olds, where we've got to help the parents become sort of the human performance director of their families. And we've got to do some basic things right. And one of the conversations we're having is this long-term athletic development, right? LTAD. And I'll point at someone named Jeremy Frisch on the internet, Jeremy_Frisch. Watch what his programming looks like. He works with a lot of young kids, and it is so much hopping, gaming, floor is lava. Let's dive over this mat and roll. Let's crawl. Let's do monkey bars. What we're seeing is, and you actually made an assumption, your kids might go out and play, but actually kids are not engaged in free play. They're engaged in homework and sitting in TV, and it's no one's fault, right? We would have done the same thing. Instead, we're drinking from the hose and, right, doing all the other stuff. But what we're seeing is that kids aren't engaged in free play. And the terminus of that is right now we're seeing an ACL epidemic. Right now we're seeing, like you remember, and I'm not just pining for the old days, and this isn't just anecdotal, but how many kids in your high school had torn ACLs? Do you guys remember? One?
I know one girl, one soccer player.
One girl, she was a gymnast, right? She did something crazy. We had one kid who tore his ACL, one kid in 4 years of school. And now we're seeing that the surgeons are reporting that they used to have to use drills to get into drill the bone holes for the ACL graft. Now they just core the bone by hand. They use like a corkscrew and they just do it by hand because the bones are so soft. So now you have to ask, why is that bone soft? Well, we haven't loaded it for years, jumping and landing and being knuckleheads, right? Girls and boys. We haven't done all the nutrition. We're not getting the sunlight. You're not, you don't have any micronutrients and fiber on board. You're not sleeping. We start to see this kind of perfect storm. So some of the things we can do with our kids is mandate outside play. And that means you have to take them out and play with them. You can't just be like, go outside and play while dad's on Facebook, right? You got to go and throw the Frisbee and be the model. You got to play, pike, pickleball is the greatest. Pickleball will save America. That's what I think. I think it'll get people outside, competing, playing. And it's gotten, pickleball is not even fun anymore. It's gotten so competitive and savage, but like go play with your kids and you'll see that like, hey, we're cutting, we're playing, we're loading. Your kids should be barefoot as much as they can, right? You really have to have your kids sitting on the floor more. And what you'll see is you can totally model those behaviors. Eating dinner together as a family every night to the extent that's possible. And you have, I have a 5'11" water polo goalie junior who plays, like we have to sneak in on the K box. We use the Kratos flywheel. Like I got 30 minutes to do some power snatches, some Kratos flywheel squats before she goes. We're just squeezing it in. We feed her dinner at like 5 and then she eats another dinner when she comes home. Those things are tough, I get, but let's go ahead and put first principles first. And you'll see that you don't have to do extra special things. Should you have a pull-up bar in your house? 100%. That the kids walk underneath it and play and it's just background noise. And it's that kind of thinking. There's a thing out there called the Gib board, Gibboard, like Gibbon and Slackboard. And it's basically a mini slack line over looks like a skateboard, right? A turned up skateboard. It's a slack line you keep in your living room. And just put it in front of the living room while you're making, dinner, while you're making breakfast. So we need to think about constraining the environment so that the organism is doing and getting what it needs. And I will point at the athletic development of Jeremy Frisch because it's unbelievable.
Yeah, we've to touch on that exact thing. We have the board, and then we took a room. It's almost like it would be like considered a reading room. and we mounted, and it's probably 10 feet wide by up to the ceiling, and it was only $300. So it was an investment, but it like we've seen, it has like one section. So 1 3-foot section is a rock wall. Now it's only going up to 9 feet or 8 feet. Then one is like a stall bar that leads up to then a little like pull up bar. And then the other is like rope that's entangled in between. And so it's 3 distinct sections. And then we have a trampoline and then the gib board. And to see a 2-year-old, like our 2-year-old who's now 3, and then our other 2-year-old now, the middle one, how quick, like just having that there. And then we're sitting typically feeding the newborn in the like a chair or on the ground, to see how in a couple of months, and they start slow, but over a couple months, like they will go in there for an hour, and they're just, our oldest now sees she can hang for like 20 seconds on it, and she just sits up there, and I'll go in without, it's not even like she wants us to look at her. I'll just go in there and she's just hanging from it. And we have like a little mat or like a little mattress in case they fall. But yeah, to see how naturally I love what you said, just set up more of the ecosystem and they will do it naturally. Because then you're not having to force them like, let's go to the park and do it. They love that as well. But like when it's just part of their ecosystem, kids are little magnets. They naturally are going to find all the nooks and crannies to kind of play in whatever environment they're in.
100%. Look, adults need some slightly different things. I need you to load. I want everyone to check out this, I think it's this Finnish company called OmniGym. I'm obsessed with OmniGym. And they've figured out how to make like outdoor public weightlifting equipment. And basically they just slide a weight on a big lever, and legit back squatting, bench, standing press. Like it's legit strength equipment. I don't have any affiliation, but now I'm thinking, how can I get OmniGym into my community? Because if kids walk by and see that, they're going to lift weights. And what you just pointed at is that the human being is a self-organizing system. And if you start hanging, then I don't have to ever remind you to hang. Erwan Lacour, the founder of MoveNet, he used to ask this question at his seminars, like who can do a pull-up? And like, everyone raised their hand and can do a pull-up. He's like, did you have a tree in your backyard? And the same hands are up. And the people who couldn't do a pull-up didn't have a tree in their backyard. They didn't climb. And so you can see is that this exposure early on, like even the wisdom of the stupid presidential physical fitness test, we got kids hanging, got kids doing flexed arm hang, isometrics. We just need that exposure. And I'll tell you, as an adult, if you're listening to this, I don't care if you can do a pull-up, but if you're not exposing yourself to hanging, you won't have a healthy shoulder. You won't have a neck that works. You won't have an upper back that works. You're leaving so much capacity on the table. You got to hang. Dr.
Kelly, the last thing before we hop off that I want you, I'd love a couple minutes of your kind of insight on is, and we touched on a little bit with like going from a workout to then at work and maybe having a bar stool or something that you're not just plopped down sitting in a chair. But Bear and I, and he's seen me be the dork in like our conference room we have a couple like kneeling pads that we keep in there for people that want to like kind of go into a lunge position while they're at the conference table. But
yes,
the question is and then some other things I encourage everyone, like, hey, take a couple 5 minutes walks throughout the day, like get out of here, get some sun, go on a 5-minute walk. Is there anything else you recommend, the way to break up an 8-hour day into, hey, you're not carving 45 minutes out the stretch, but like if you're somebody who works in an office, what are some very practical things they could implement that'll make a difference of just, as you said, not becoming just kind of rock solid throughout that 8 hours of sitting in a chair for 6 out of the 8 hours?
I was just speaking with my wife. We were at the Stanford Environmental Medicine Longevity Annual Conference. And the research is coming out that 10 minutes of moving really does matter. And I think many of us who have these athletic backgrounds are like, I can't train for 3 hours. Fuck it. I'm out. Right? It's not worth it, right? I can't do all my back squats. So, I'm not even going to back squat today because, I won't even have time to work up to a PR. So keep in mind that constant motion is really the game. And to your point that just 5 minutes of movement, Exxon used to lock the computers out, or Exxon or Chevron used to lock their computers out like every 90 minutes. They'd lock them out for 15 minutes. And so everyone was forced to right in the middle of a project. They'd have to stand up and do their thing. Remember the research that smokers were the healthiest people in the building because they had to get up and walk. And the further you put the smoking section, the healthier those people got. Damn it. So, to your point, what we should be looking at is how do I create as much non-exercise activities as I can during the day? So there's let's say 3 things that you can get done during the day. Number 1, I need you to go outside if you can, right? And even just a little sunlight on your body and your brain will make a big difference. Number 2, max out the amount of non-exercise activity you can get. try to get 8,000 steps while you're at work. 8,000. You might need to go for a quick walk before you get there. You might need to go for a quick walk and a break. Guarantee you can take a one walking meeting, right? Call on the walk or pace your room. But if you can get that 8,000 steps, we reduce all-cause mortality by 51%, and you manage the congestion and the aftermath, right? You Michael Phelps the twice as much cool down as you did the sprint. Every Kentucky Derby horse, they're dumping water on those horses. Those horses are walking around the tracks. They don't get pneumonia, right? That's what we're talking about for humans. And then here's the magic. I want you to crush 800 grams of fruits and vegetables while you're at work. 800 grams. That's the research that says you're going to have fewer health problems. It's a quantifiable piece at Optimizing Nutrition. That's E.C. Sinkowski's 800-gram challenge. But we gamify work, and that can be a pound of melon. That's 230 calories. But get 800 grams. That's going to give more fiber, more micronutrients, and you're just going to be stuffing melon and apples down your gullet all day long. What we find then is you've gotten some sunlight, you've maxed out your movement, whatever that looks like, however it's appropriate, and then you crush the micronutrients and fiber. That means you got a little healthier at work. You actually made your body and brain better on someone else's time. Then when you suddenly sneak into the gym, you're primed, you're ready to go, you're fueled, you have your tissues ready to, all the substrates they need to be awesome. I think you'll see that if you did those things, life would change.
Love it. I want to do a quick little speed round if that's okay. And try not to go down a rabbit hole too much because I know you're a busy guy, but just a few quick ones. Just your overall thoughts, like yes, no, maybe a little bit of amplifying information, but just, kind of not, I don't want to call them fads because they're not, but let's start with cold tub.
Super fun.
Encouraged?
Super fun.
Okay. Got it. All right.
Look, I don't want anyone to major in the minors. That's what we call it. I think cold plunging is great. I think it adds variety. We love our plunge. We have one. I don't think if you don't have a plunge, you can still go to the Olympics without having a plunge.
Got it. Sauna.
Love it.
Okay.
And one of the reasons is we feel like people are working like maniacs. We have a sauna. I spend more time in the sauna than I do in my cold plunge. But we say the bigger the engine, the bigger the brakes. All the brain health, adaptation. Also, your little kids hate the sauna. It's too hot. They can't handle it. So they won't come in there. So you're alone with your wife having real conversations. One day a week, my boys and I get together, we sauna and we just talk about life. And we have it's the truth barrel. So I'm huge fan of the sauna. But if you don't have a sauna, that's okay too.
All right. How about peptides?
I think we are seeing the Wild West. Do I think you should be on BPC 157 the rest of your life? That seems super sketchy. I think if you have a tweak and you're old, why aren't you leaning into all the legal things that are available to you? That's what I think. You probably should not buy it from some sketchy guy who's mixing it in his bathtub from China. It should be NSF certified. There are companies out there that have NSF tested, that's third-party testing for these things. And I think, man, if you tweak something, what are we doing? You should have a blood panel. You should know what's going on. Like we should be leaning into all the things that are available to us that are safe. Absolutely.
Okay. What about a stem cell?
I think it's, I think we want to believe that stem cells are magic fairy dust. You just inject them and they just, it's like cocaine and steroids and a little tiny thing. I suspect that we're going to continue to see a radical transformation and expansion of what's possible with human biology. We just saw an article today in New York Times about the gene-edited kid who was a baby who had, a gnarly hereditary disease and cured that. So I think we're going to see that we don't have to, that there is some good data around that these things are great biological band-aids, bioadhesive band-aids, and they can really help some healing, but you got to do everything else.
Hydrogen water.
If it tastes better and you drink more water, I'm in.
Anything else? What about those grounding mats, the alkaline mats? You heard of those? I don't know anything about those. I think
it's totally your right to spend your money on your health as your hobby, but you didn't lunch today. You didn't sleep 8 hours. You didn't, haven't had sex in a week or 2 weeks. You don't have any close friends. You didn't go outside. Like, you know what I mean? Like, dude, let's do this stuff first. And if those things, I think Gabby Reese said it best, those things help you keep you motivated and they keep you interested. Super cool. Right. But there is, and I'm going to be super offensive here. There's a lot of, we're selling shit to white people under the banner of health and longevity. Longevity is a business. And that is not the same thing as performance, right? And we see a lot of people who are engaging with health-like activities, like have a grounding mat. I'm like, that's super cool. You can go outside barefoot, but I'm sure there's something to that. And yes, lightning strikes the earth 10,000 times a second, whatever. But the point is, let's make sure that we're doing first things first. The model, that metaphor we use all the time is everyone is arguing about what color rope to take up, Everest, and which crampons you need and what gel. And meanwhile, like, no one's at base camp. So you got to get to base camp first before you start being all crazy with your, super carbon fiber ice axe. But the carbon fiber ice axe is sexy.
Yeah.
So let's make it sexy and let's make it fun. It's okay that health is your hobby, but like, dude, you got to lift a weight. You gotta play. There's these other things that I want to make sure we're doing first.
Yeah. I think, that those things are kind of that final 10%. And I think we have too many people that go just straight to that. And it's like, okay, well, are you getting 8 hours of sleep? Are you hydrated? And are you moving your body? And like, there's a lot of people that probably aren't doing those first three, but they think, oh, because I have like this alkaline mat, like I'm healthy. It's like, no, you're missing the 90%. So I think, yeah.
And I want to tell you, in our coaching program, we're like, hey, you need to eat 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound body weight. Why? Because we're trying to get some calorie control, and you're old. Your protein signal, you need more protein because you're older. And people vetch and whine about how much food they have to eat and all this watermelon and all these cucumbers. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you want to have muscles, but your last bone DEXA scan was that you're osteopenic, you're sarcopenic. Like, dude, like you're telling a lie to yourself. And so let's make sure that we're actually hitting those things. And, Lane Norton, bless his little heart, says bone crushing consistency wins. And that's what we're talking about. It's the same bone crushing consistency for my college athletes, professional athletes, Olympic athletes, and moms and dads. Everyone needs the same thing. We just turn the dials a little bit.
Love it. I will say I'll plug one thing. I have no affiliation, but your brother actually got me onto it, the 8 sleep. I have one of those, and it changes the temp and everything. And that's been cool. Like mine starts at like a -8, which is like freaking freezing. And then it'll warm you up. Your wake up time, if you're waking up at 6, it'll start heating the mattress up. So you have like more of a natural wake up, and then it starts to like slowly vibrate, like barely. And it's like it's the most gentle wake up ever. Yeah.
When we start looking at behaviors that enhance these foundational pieces. That's different. Hey, I'm super stressed. I jump in my cold plunge and sauna, Jocko Willink style, hit the e-brake, and I fall asleep because my brain turns off. I'm in. Now that sauna isn't a sauna thing, it's a sleep thing, right? Yep. And now we're talking and thermal. I've been sleeping on a chili pad, this Doc Pro for, over a decade. And I'll tell you that it changed my life. And 8 sleep is killing it. And getting yourself cold, not waking up hot, changed my life forever.
Love it. Well, Dr. Kelly, this was awesome. We appreciate your enthusiasm. Where do you live, by the way? I feel like I want to come up train with you one of these days, if we're ever in the area.
We're just up in San Rafael. We're just north of the bridge by 20 minutes.
Okay.
800 meters from the mountain bike paths. Come hang out with us for sure.
Love it. Well, this, as a couple of gym rats, this is super insightful, and we really appreciate you carving out some time. Anything you want to plug for the audience before we roll?
Look, however you start, get a blood panel, start tracking what measures, do you feel less stiff? It really is that simple. But we have all of the tools we possibly need for at least a decade. Let's get them implemented into our thing. Take a look at, Built to Move. That was our prequel to Supple Leopard for families, for aunties and uncles to bring everyone else on the journey. And, I'll just say, I know there are a lot of good strength and conditioning programs, but for 40 and 50 and 60-year-olds, that we really built this program for them who need real strength and conditioning, but, also have bodies with a patina. You know what I mean?
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kelly.
My pleasure, guys. Good to see you.
Yeah. Have a good week. We'll see you.